topic of kind of expanding beyond fitness, because what I've kind of gleaned from this conversation is like, from you, and as some of the conversation before is, it's not just about the burpees and the reps and the amount of protein and the nutrients. There's a real deeper side of fitness. And even when you talked about the burpees challenge, like what that brought forward, when you talked about the burpees challenge you did, it's very similar to how I felt when I did Vipassana for 10 days and sat and meditated. I guess the question here is around kind of discipline and motivation, in our fitness, because this is something that people struggle with. We're in February. This is traditionally the point at which people's gym memberships that they signed up to have gone unused. And there's lots of different types of motivation. And maybe we'll talk about the first one, which I think a lot of people use, is this kind of dark motivation, the motivation of shame and ridicule. The motivation I find with myself and my client comes through our inner critic, who's like berating us into doing the thing we want to do. Is this something you see a lot in the fitness world with the people that you work with?
Yeah. That motivation is like that it's a push. It's a reaction. It's short-lived. It's intense. It gets you through a little bit. It works at the beginning of January. It works before Ibiza in the summer, because there could be shame or ridicule on the other side of it. So motivation for that works that very short amount of time, but it's superficial, and it's not connected to your core and your being, and it's not sustainable ultimately. And most of everything that we want to do in our lives needs to come from a place of sustainability, from a place of ease and flow. And not saying fitness and motivation is always easy, but finding a motivation that's more internal, more like a pull, more like this is connected to a positive emotion, not a negative one. So what motivation do you call that? If the other one was, did you say dark motivation?
Light motivation?
Yeah, light motivation, yeah. Or I guess other conversations might have called it motivation and inspiration, or push and pull. And yeah, this light motivation feels like a pull, and it doesn't just happen. It comes from self-reflection. It comes from actual working on yourself and inquiring about yourself, and taking the time to think, what is it that I truly want? And then asking why. Okay, I want to lose body fat. Why? I want to build muscle. Why? I want to be fitter and more mobile. Why? And if the why is something about proving something to some ex-girlfriend, then dig a little bit deeper and keep going, and realize that it should all come flowing back to inside of you, not external to you. And the motivation should be about the self-love that you have for yourself, and wanting for your best life, not to prove to anything to anybody else outside of you, but to thrive yourself. And when you connect the dots between the action and the plan and the behaviors with that internal, deep, aligned motivation, then it is sustainable, and it is easier to create those actual lifestyle habits. And there's days where you're like, I can't be bothered, but it shouldn't last long, because you then hopefully look at your vision board or your journaling and you realize what's important to you. No, I want to do this because it aligns with the person that I want to be and the person that I am. Motivation is a real big topic, and I talk to a lot of people about this because it really pains me to see people start and stop and fall off and quit. And it's usually because of this motivation topic and not having a strong alignment to what's important, and usually taking on too much. Dark motivation is usually also associated with changing everything at once, and transforming your life and changing your entire diet and doing too much exercise and neglecting other parts of your life. And in a week, 2 weeks, it all falls apart and gives up because it wasn't sustainable. So actually finding less action and small regular changes is more meaningful and much better for making long-term transformation and long-term change.
And it's so similar as you speak there, so similar to kind of the work I do with men around the ways of relating and their relationship is like, we start with the why, you know, like so many men come to me because breakup. That's one of the most popular reasons that men end up sitting in front of me. They've had a breakup and they're wanting their ex back, or they're wanting to get over it. And often with the ex back is there's this desire to prove them wrong. I want to prove them wrong that I'm a good person, I'm a good guy. I don't know what your thoughts are. This like dark motivation can only drive you so long, right, in life, because it actually, I listened to a podcast with Chris Williamson about this, and he talked about his own personal experience of dark motivation, of kind of wanting to prove people wrong and wanting to be better. And he talked about how it can only sustain you so long before it drags you down into the darkness with it. You know, you become very cynical about people, because if the thing that's driving you is this external proving people wrong, then suddenly your lens of how you see the world is all about this kind of competition with everybody else. It's when actually, you know, what I'm hearing you saying, which I kind of feel is this, you know, this pull you described, or this positive motivation, comes from this desire that's just like to be as an embodiment of being. Like, I'm choosing to embody this being because this is what feels right or good to me, or is in alignment with who I am both being and I want to be through time and space.
I think that what you just said also brings up in me about external validation and that competition with others. So a good check is, if nobody was ever going to see the results of this, would I still do it? If this was purely for me and the mirror and how I feel, would I still do it? Or is this purely just because I want somebody to see it? And we all have an ego. That's all there. But being aware of the ego and what part it's playing in our journey is very important, and to keep it in check and to find that balance with what the ego is driving, and also what is beneath the ego, and what is important to us, and our health and our longevity and self-care, and for ourselves to be happy in mind and body.
Mind, you know, being happy in mind. You know, I started my fitness journey probably over 20 years ago. Also off the back of a breakup, actually.
It's a good time to start. I mean, sometimes that motivation can take you onto a real healthy place.
Yeah. I was 17 years old the first time I walked into a gym, and you know, gyms were very different places back when I was 17 going into a gym. I was going into like a real meathead gym, and they would say there was a meathead gym. It wasn't a woman. I don't think you saw one woman came on a Sunday with her partner. And he was this massive dude, so no one even looked in her direction. What was I trying to get at? I was going to talk about the fact that like the culture around exercise and gyms in particular and weightlifting has really shifted from like this very much like meathead steroids type of thing, and almost become very popular in the world. But one aspect I'm seeing, and you mentioned there, the mind, that I think is often neglected is the mental health aspect, the looking after the mind. And I get the impression from knowing you and speaking to you that like for you, this is a holistic journey. It's not just about like get the body in a place at all costs. Maybe your life was like that in times gone by, but there's this real aspect of alignment of mind, body, and you know, I say soul, of like bridge, like having them moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
How has your opinions around kind of mental health shifted through your fitness journey?
To respond to the first part, my time in the fitness career, I've seen a lot of people in incredible shape who aren't necessarily happy. So whilst your exterior can be a sign of potentially physical health, not always, is definitely not always an indication of your mental health. So it's always been very important to me. And I've always been very interested right from the beginning to help people on this more holistic journey. It's been very, very obvious to me from the beginning that this is a holistic overall well-being journey for people. And sometimes, and most often than not, going into the physical, into the body first is sometimes a gateway into better mental health, but not always. It can go off into different paths where it's a bit more negative mental health if it's taken in the wrong paths. But to be super aware of the mind, body, spirit or soul, and to think, how am I serving all areas and moving forwards in the right direction is important. So yeah, there were parts of my own personal career where it was all about the body. Like when fitness modeling was my priority, I was PTing. I was like, how do I get to be that guy on the front cover of magazines? I would undereat, overtrain, and my mind really wasn't. I mean, thankfully, I think I was quite happy, but I probably didn't have there wasn't a good balance in regards to my relationship with food, with training, and other aspects of my life, to the point where I was restricting myself and then binging after either photo shoots or castings and things like that. And actually it wasn't long until I realized there was an imbalance in regards to waiting to be happy and waiting to feel accomplished when I got there. When I did this, I will be happy. When I get there, I will be happy. And probably quite a few years of repeating this cycle, I started to realize, okay, I've achieved these great things, but every time I get there, I can see this other mountain, this other peak that I want to get to, and I'll be happy when I get on that one. So then I started to realize that happiness needs to come on the journey, not just waiting for the 0.1% of the life journey. So it took practice to find more of a rhythm and a momentum of my health and fitness lifestyle that supported my mindset, my mental health as well. And social media helped that a little bit, because whilst like we spoke about this internal motivation and dark motivation, etc., and external and internal, there is a paradox to that as well. And I found that whilst social media was a very small thing, there was Instagram, Facebook, but this is 2015, 2014. It wasn't as massive as it is now. I was mostly getting in shape for castings and photo shoots that were weeks or months separated. So that gave me plenty of time to binge over the weekend and then restrict for another 3 or 4 weeks before the next one. Very bad routine. But social media came around and I wanted to look good and I wanted to feel good every day for me to film a workout and take a photo and be confident in myself and my being. And that only came from doing the habits and doing the things that made me feel that way each day. And that wasn't eating crap. It was eating good food and sleeping and getting out in nature and exercising the body, not to destruction, but because it's enjoyable for the body. That's how it's evolved.